It says initial investment. It might not be upfront.
It's like the have.
Upfront sounds like initial.
Yeah.
Like
Is there any problem with me moving around to the end so I can see?
Initial investment over 10 years. It's an initial investment.
Object.
The only initial investment is buying the land and 30 million over 3 years.
Let us just be honest. If we're setting up on a shoot, set up to fail, giving more money back.
That's okay as a taxpayer about alone.
Well, you know, they could always yank the fund. What are you doing there?
I want to be able to see the thing. It's on Teams.
Oh.
That's all. I'm not. It's no takeover.
I thought
It's no land grab.
I thought we were going to grill you.
Yeah, why are you
Tell the truth.
supporting
Tell
this
the
truth. Have you seen the business case?
Where'd you put the money? Reggie?
Professor, thank you for joining us. Can you hear us clearly?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Very well. Welcome to today's hearing of the Parliament of South Australia's Joint Committee on the Establishment of Adelaide University. My name's Dan Crick and I'm the presiding member. It may be that you have a clear view of the room, in which case to my right and your left will be the member for Adelaide, Lucy Hood, the member for Florey, Michael Brown raising his hand there. We also have the member for Gibson, Sarah Andrews, also raising her hand, and then the opposite.
The first person I can see.
Very well. Very well. Well, then I'll announce some other names for you, but of course you won't, in fact, have visibility over them. I understand that you'll be able to see the Honourable John Gardner, and on that side of the table as well, joining you, the Honourable Jing Lee, the Honourable Connie Benares, the Honourable Sarah Game, the Honourable Rob Sims, and the Honourable Reggie Martin. All will be obscured.
Many have tried to obscure us.
But our voices won't be.
No.
Professor, we understand that you have a commitment following your evidence here, and so we'll be very mindful of your time. Do you have a statement that you would wish to give?
No, I don't. I'm responding to your request that I meet you. Happy to answer questions or talk to the issues you want to raise.
Very well. Questions from members?
I can ask a general.
The Honourable Rob Sims.
Thank you, Professor Kane. And I'm sorry you can't see me, but hopefully you can hear me okay. Just wanted to ask about the announcement of the merger happening before the Australian University's Accord report. Is that something that's concerned you?
No, not at all. No.
And why is that?
There's a lot of change going on in universities, and while the Accord will recommend changes to a great number of things, it won't be dictating, it can't dictate to particular universities what their structures are. And I was actually going to congratulate you as a state on looking at this merger and looking at what a new university could be. So this actually could be one of the quite exciting things for happening before the Accord and then taking on some of the Accord recommendations. I think it will put South Australia in a good position. And from the Accord's point of view, it's very interesting to see the experiment in live action.
One element that the interim report of the Accord touches on is the need for governance structures that include people who deeply understand the functions of universities. Have you had an opportunity to look at the draft Adelaide University Bill, and do you consider that it strikes that balance?
No, I haven't had a chance to.
What would a university governance look like for you in terms of the inclusion of people who better understand universities?
Particularly people, it's exactly as it's worded in the recommendation that it's on its way, I understand, to a committee advising National Cabinet. It is people who really have been involved in the business of universities and understand how they operate. So analogously to a mining company where you would expect people who are familiar with mining and geology and geophysics, similarly you'd expect people who are familiar with running organisations that are delivering higher education and research. So they might be, for example, former senior executives of universities are the most likely people, maybe former chancellors of universities, but people who really do understand all the lexicon, the language, the operations, and can really test with management that management is doing doing well in what it's doing.
One of the statements within the report, and a quote from that, is this recognition that Australian higher education would benefit from having a wider range of complementary institutions differentiated by their unique missions. Are you therefore concerned about the implications of a merger in terms of reducing the number of institutions, particularly in our state?
No, I'm not at all concerned. And the diversity meaning that it was really meant to mean diversity in type and size and shape and operation, not diversity in terms of absolute numbers.
Okay, thank you very much. Oh, one final question. Are you aware of any mergers in the sector that have been done to the scale that's been proposed here in South Australia?
Sorry, the sound has dropped off.
Are you aware? Sorry, can you hear me now, Professor?
Yes, I can.
Are you aware of any mergers in the sector that have been done to the scale that is being proposed here in South Australia? And if so, what was the outcome of those?
So a particularly good one would be the University of Western Sydney University, but then known as University of Western Sydney, which came together, it's now 24, 25 years ago. They came together more like 30. But 20 odd years ago, they made a decision to truly merge as opposed to just be a collection of former higher education institutions. And it was tough, as I remember looking from the outside, but they worked hard and they brought together an exciting new curriculum, a new approach to research, a new approach to engagement with Western Sydney, their home base, and it was particularly successful. And I find some of the things, it's a great question, I find some of the issues here, as I read, for example, the joint submission from the two universities to the review that came in response to the interim report, the movements to new style of curriculum, a new sharpening of the focus in the research production and research training, new emphasis on equity, new emphasis on engagement. It reads in a very exciting way as something that is going to be well fit for dealing with some of the challenges that we raise in the review, like the big skills challenge, the big equity challenge, the big challenge about new knowledge and research.
Can I just ask, Professor, in terms of the scenario that you provided, I think you said from Western Australia, how was that Western Sydney, sorry. How was that undertaken? Was that led by the New South Wales government, or was it an independent process by maybe a commission of inquiry?
No, it was the bringing together of the university was done under the New South Wales government at the time, but it was in response to the Dawkins reforms of 88, 89. But the university stayed as a collection of institutions rather than an integrated one for many years. But it was only around, I think it was the 98 to 2000 period and just on, that it truly integrated, that it really looked, and it was done internally. It was done by the university under its then Vice-Chancellor, an Adelaide graduate, as it turns out, Jan Reid, that it really worked hard to work out what it meant to be a single operation. And it's done it very successfully in Western Sydney as a very successful university.
And I think you have a previous association with the University of Adelaide. Do you think this new university will take on the brand of the University of Adelaide? Is it just going to be a continuation of that brand?
I would hope it took on the best aspects of the brand, yes, and the brand of the University of South Australia. And yes, I do have a previous association and a previous association, obviously, with the merger issue as well.
Thank you.
The Honourable Connie Benares, and then the member for Gibson and the member for Adelaide.
Thank you for your time, Professor. I apologise you can't see us. We've heard competing evidence during this inquiry about the appropriateness or otherwise of this merger pending those the final report and recommendations of Accord. And of course, we have to weigh up that evidence and determine what weight to give to it. So my question to you is, just to be clear, there is nothing in this merger proposal that is, from your perspective, at odds with what we know about the possible recommendations and outcomes of the Accord review. Is that a fair assessment?
That is, exactly.
Thank you.
You spoke earlier about if the merger goes ahead, it's actually a good opportunity with regards to the timing of the Accord report. Can you give us a bit more information about what those opportunities might look like, as you said, being first out of the blocks?
Yes, particularly looking at new learning and teaching issues and completely revising the curriculum. We're in, as a world, we're in the middle of a learning and teaching revolution, arguably, which really particularly turned on the pandemic and the fact that so many people are learning online, and there's a need for people to be able to do higher education and to do things like tutorials online and feel as though they are in a small class interacting with the teacher. In many ways, this goes back, the best example I've seen of this in some ways goes back to when I was at the University of Adelaide, quite some way back, when we were teaching wool science with remote locations in Adelaide, Armidale, Sydney, and one other location, I think somewhere in Victoria. And the small tutorials where these students all formed a very strong bond. There were about 12 students, I seem to remember. And they formed a very strong bond and were very well taught because the teachers at all four places interacted so well. And it was a very early example of just how strong and powerful online education can be. And I think the sort of things that are being looked at here are part of looking at new ways of learning and teaching along those lines, which I think will be very exciting for the future as we, through the Accord, recommend strong new moves on skills training, strong new moves on equity, where often an equity student will have care responsibilities, won't be able to afford travelling distances, and needs, however, to have extraordinarily good education. And I think what's being suggested here in the documents I've seen to date, I find very exciting.
Thank you.
For Adelaide.
Thank you.
I've got another one. Thank you. You can't see me either. This is Lucy Hood, the member for Adelaide. We have heard previous evidence just around state governments actually making some more investments into higher education. I believe a previous witness mentioned Queensland and Victoria as doing this. Under this plan, it would obviously see an investment at a state government level. Is that something you welcome going forward?
Absolutely. And of course, I think there are other states. I see quite a lot of investment here in New South Wales on many fronts, particularly on the research and research intensive front over several years. Governments of different colours here have invested a lot. The University of Tasmania is a recipient of quite a lot of funds from the state government, where the state government for the last 25 years has put almost all its agricultural and aquacultural research into the University of Tasmania under an agreement that's been renewed several times. So yes, I'm seeing state governments everywhere invest in their universities, and I think that's fantastic.
Further questions from members? Member for Morayalton.
Thank you, Vice Chancellor, as I still think of you. I'm interested in relation to I have issue with the movement of the Classics Department out of the Mitchell building, but I'm getting over it.
It's a long-standing grievance.
Can I?
It looks more beautiful as it's been set up as a meeting.
I'm sure the administrators appreciate that legacy. Can I ask, just in relation to this question of the impact of state government investment in research, as the member for Adelaide asked about, one of the issues that has been raised with us, particularly in relation to Flinders University, is I suppose a request that we consider if the state is going to invest in one institution, then doing so exclusively to one institution is a concern. Do you have any view on the desirability of broadening that investment to include all South Australian universities, which, if the merger would go ahead, would be one other, or do you think that is something that's not a concern?
I think it's very much a matter for the state government, but I do note that state governments around the country often set up competitive schemes, as well as giving direct grants when they want it on certain particular topics. So I think it's very much what you're trying to achieve with the money. And I realise you're particularly referring to the money around the merger, and that's one of those special cases. But I really feel I don't know enough about the amount and direct obligations going with the investment to comment much further.
Well, perhaps I can go towards some of the assumptions that the benefits have been based on. A merged university with an investment and research fund is said to therefore be able to invest in attracting certain researchers to the new institution who would help lift the new institution up the rankings, enabling us to double down on getting further research grants, be able to charge more for more international students, and certainly on that side of things, everyone's said to be a winner. It's a crude summary, but I hope not an unreasonable one. In the nature of how one would attract those extra researchers to the new institution, I think at least one witness has given evidence that the easiest place to get a high quality researcher is someone who lives within the same state already. Changing a commute is easier than changing the city or the country that someone lives in. With your expertise, can you give us advice on the nature of attracting those researchers? What sort of people are we talking about, and how are universities going about this in a competitive way?
I'll give you the textbook answer, and then I'll give you the answer from experience. The textbook answer is that, of course, you can always attract people where you have a large pot of money and the determination to do something that's leading edge. And researchers from around the world typically will come and will apply, and you'll get loads and loads of applications. And I think Adelaide will, with what's proposed. My attracting to the current university in its former form of a couple of decades ago was that you could often get incredibly good people who were themselves South Australians wanting to return, either for education for their children or because of parents being old. And often we attracted people who were amazing researchers but wanted to come back to Adelaide. So there's a little extra tip for getting the extra good people that you want. But I don't think there'll be any trouble attracting people. One of the great things about Adelaide University is its concentrated nature of its research. It does have some really high points of research, and that's very, very good for attracting people. So further money into those concentrated points will be a real winner.
Some witnesses have talked about the what they perceive as the benefits of our current arrangement, with Adelaide University having a strong research focus, UniSA having a strong focus on, it's been described in different ways, but let's call it student experience or vocational outcomes for students. Obviously, what they would highlight is their particular areas of excellence. Do you have a view on whether there's any, I suspect you have a view, but maybe can you expand on your lack of concern about reduction in choice for students? Some people have put that they prefer being able to pursue a program at a university like UniSA or a program like those that are at Adelaide University. In what way are you assuaged from being concerned about that reduction in diversity of choice for students?
Well, I'm not sure that students look for great, there's not great diversity in type between universities, I would say, across Australia. It's one of the issues we're wrestling with in the Accord. One of the reasons we are looking at greater diversity, what does diversity mean? Yes, there's probably more research concentration at Adelaide, the University of Adelaide, but there's really great research at the University of South Australia. Yes, there's possibly more student closeness, sort of attention with teachers at the University of South Australia, but I can point to many good examples at the University of Adelaide. I think it's a matter of degree in both cases. I don't think it's a big issue. They're always, and of course then there's Flinders and there's various private universities in Adelaide. So I don't think there is an issue. When I looked at this case at the request of the Olsen government quite some years ago and wrote advice at their request on it, it really didn't seem to me that there was a lot of benefit, that they were so different, all the students were getting too much, really, really different choice to oppose the idea of the merger.
Further questions? Thank you, Professor, for your evidence. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
Thanks, Professor.
Thank you.